Okay, welcome to the second installment of developing with Stackato. So in today's screencast, what I want to do is I want to show you how to target two environments. The first environment is the local Stackato microcloud that in a previous screencast I showed you how to install on your local machine. And then the second cloud that we'll just deploy to is actually the cluster that's running on Amazon.com. So really what this workflow shows you is kind of a typical develop, deploy scenario on your local environment and your staging environment. So this would be analogous to what you would do developing locally. You would develop to your local, deploy to your local cloud, do your testing, do your bug fixing, run your tests, things of that nature, make sure everything's working properly, and then when you're satisfied with the way things look, you would push it up to the cluster on Amazon. That would represent staging or something like that. So in this first little part, what I'll do is I'll show you how to deploy this thing locally, and then after we deploy it locally, then I'll show you how to deploy it on Amazon. So let's get started. So I've got this Rails application. I can actually give the URL at the end of the screencast where to find it. It's on GitHub if you want to pull it down and check it out. This particular project is built on what Stackato calls a build pack. So that's just a Stackato YAML file that makes the declarations about what this application needs in terms of the Stackato framework. So we can look at that real quickly. So here it is. It points to this build pack URL, which you can have a look at for yourself and kind of figure out what's going on there. And then there's some directives here that tell the framework what to do. So we're going to execute the Rails server. That's the web server that the Rails application needs. This thing is based on a Postgres database, and then we're requiring or asking for 512 megabytes of memory. So that's that. So let's first target our local environment. So as you recall, this is the environment that we're going to be targeting. This is running on my local machine. So I just do a Stackato target and then the name of this instance. So you lead it with an API, Stackato GB6J local. And we've targeted that environment, and then all I have to do is say Stackato push. Okay, so there we go. Looks like the application installed. We can go over here to our local management console, just do a refresh, and we can see here that the application's been deployed. And if we want to, we can go up here to the command line. We can say Stackato open, and it'll open up the Ruby application in the local window there. So we know it's up and running. This is a boilerplate, nothing too exciting. Okay, so we're back, and previously I showed you the boilerplate for this application, which is a standard Ruby on Rails boilerplate, and it's completely uninteresting. So what I wanted to do is give a little bit more detail around this application and show you how to get data into the application. So what I've got here is the application is basically a web service, an API based application. There's no user interface or anything like that. So what I've got here is this API that, if you imagine a travel application, this API, you call this API and you would search for open flights. So if I hit the refresh button here on this API, you can see that I get absolutely no results. So what I'd like to do is I'd like to be able to seed the database with some seed data and get some flights in there. So in order to do that, what we have to do is we have to actually execute, we have to get a command to execute in the context of the application that's deployed on the microcontroller, and I'm going to show you how to do that. It's pretty easy with Stackato. So what we're going to do is we're going to use the Stackato command line interface, and we're going to say run and then the name of the application, which is App Center, and then we're going to tell it what command we want to run. We're going to say bundle exec rake db seed. Now the bundle exec rake db seed is all completely Ruby on Rails. You can consult that documentation to understand what that's doing. But basically what I'm doing is I'm telling the Stackato command line client that I want to run this application bundle exec rake db seed against the instance that's deployed App Center. So that's all I'm doing. Oops, spelled it wrong. And it's doing its thing. And it's done. So now if I go down here to this web call and I refresh the page, I should now get results from the web application based on the seed data that I sent it. And there you go. So I'm going to continue this screencast. The next thing what we'll do is we'll actually target the Amazon cluster, and we'll do this whole thing, and I'll show you that it's just as easy to deploy this on Amazon as it is your local cluster. Okay, so at this point, just to review, what we've done is we've deployed onto a microcluster. So we've got an application we've developed locally. We've deployed onto that microcluster. We've done our testing. We've done our unit tests. We've made sure everything looks right. So within the context of the workflow, let's imagine we want to take this application and we want to promote it up to, let's say, a staging environment or something like that, an integration environment. So for this particular example, we've got a Stackato cluster running on Amazon EC2 instances, and what we want to do is go ahead and target that as a deployment platform for this particular application. So it looks exactly the same way as it does for the microcloud deployment. We just have to target that new instance. So how do you do that? It's actually pretty easy. So I'm going to go down here and I'm going to grab this piece of the URL. This is actually the API URL for the cluster that we want to target. So we say Stackato target and then the name of the cluster that we want to target. Okay, so now the next thing we want to do is we want to log in. Okay, so we're targeted and logged in. So all we do at this point is we do a Stackato push. And it asks the exact same questions that we were asked during the microcloud deployment. So we're just going to take the defaults. And it's going to cook and push and do the things that it needs to do to get this thing deployed. Okay, so far so good. So it looks like our application was deployed. If we go down here and refresh this application page, we can see that App Center was actually deployed as expected. We can go down here and click on this and we get back to this boilerplate page. Now, just like the other example, if we do API / flights open, we get an empty data set. Okay, so we've got the same problem here as we did for the microcloud. We need to see the database, so we do that the exact same way. We do a Stackato run App Center bundle exec rake db seed. So the database should be seated. So if I go back down here and do a refresh, there are all our flights coming back as nice JSON objects. So that's about it. You know, that's really the soup to nuts end-to-end workflow that a developer would go through to develop an application from staging, or rather from deployment or development to deploying to stage. You know, the nice thing about this is all of this can be automated. So anyway, I hope this made sense. I hope you enjoyed the screencast, and stay tuned for more.